What if you disappeared today, and for the next 90 days, nobody knew what you were becoming? No posts, no updates, no explanations, no proof, just silence. And somewhere inside that silence, a version of you starts waking up that your friends have never met. Here is the promise. If you actually walk through this with me, not just listen, but let it land, you will understand exactly how to use the next 90 days to rebuild yourself from the inside out. Not your Instagram, not your image, you. But before I tell you how, I need to tell you why this works. And I need to tell you the part nobody warns you about. Because disappearing for 90 days sounds simple. It is not. The hardest part will not be the training. The hardest part will be becoming comfortable with nobody watching. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you are going to understand something about yourself that you have been avoiding for a long time. There is a boy in a story who spends years being called the weakest hunter alive. Everyone around him is stronger. Everyone around him is faster. He gets sent into a dungeon that should have killed him instantly. And for a moment, it looks like it will. But something happens down there in the dark, alone, with no one watching, and no one coming to save him. He is given a choice, and he takes it. Sung Jin-Woo does not become powerful because a system handed him strength. He becomes powerful because he was finally alone with what he actually was, and he refused to stay there. That is the part of the story people skip. They remember the power. They forget the silence that came before it. You are standing at your own version of that dungeon right now. Except nobody forced you into it. You have to walk in yourself. Let's talk about who you actually are right now, before the 90 days. Not who you say you are, not the version you perform for people. The version that exists at 11 at night, when the apps are open and the promises from that morning are already broken. You are not weak because you lack ambition. You have plenty of ambition. You have had ambition your entire life. You are weak because your ambition has never once been left alone long enough to become anything. Every time an idea starts to grow inside you, you hand it to someone else before it is ready. You tell people your plans before you have lived them. You post the beginning before you have earned the middle. And somewhere in that telling, the energy leaks out. The thing that should have become discipline becomes a conversation instead. This is not an accident. This is biology working against you. When you tell someone your goal, your brain rewards you as if you already accomplished it. A small hit of identity, a small hit of pride, released the moment someone says that's amazing, or hits like on a screen, and because your brain already got its reward, the actual work loses its pull. You feel finished before you have started. This is why so many people talk about transformation constantly and change nothing. Not because they are lazy, because they keep spending the fuel they needed for the work on the applause instead. So here is the first thing disappearing does. It cuts off the applause. And when the applause is gone, something strange happens. You have to actually do the thing to feel anything at all. That discomfort is not your enemy. That discomfort is the first sign that something real is finally happening. Now here is a question worth sitting with. Should you completely cut everyone off for 90 days? Should you vanish from your family, ignore your friends, go dark on everyone who cares about you? No, that is not what this is. Disappearing does not mean abandoning people. It means abandoning performance. It means you stop narrating your life in real time for an audience that has no stake in your outcome. You still show up for the people who matter. You still answer the call from your mother. What you stop doing is documenting your becoming for strangers, and worse, for acquaintances who are quietly comparing themselves to you while pretending to cheer you on. You already know exactly what you have been avoiding. You have known for months, maybe years. It is not a mystery. It is a decision. Let's go deeper into what these 90 days will actually contain, because vague inspiration will not carry you through week 3 when everything in you wants to quit. Day 1 will not feel dramatic, this matters. So listen carefully. You are not going to wake up on day 1 and feel like Sung Jin-Woo crawling out of that dungeon reborn. You are going to wake up and feel almost exactly the same as yesterday. Your body will look the same. Your bank account will look the same. Your habits will still be dragging their claws into your morning. But something invisible will already be different. Your decisions are no longer the same. And eventually, your decisions will change your identity. That gap between the moment you decide and the moment your identity actually catches up is where most people quit. They expect transformation to feel like transformation immediately. It does not. For the first 2, sometimes 3 weeks, transformation feels like nothing. It feels like friction. It feels like willpower dragging a body that does not want to move yet. This is exactly where the weak version of you will try to negotiate. It will not announce itself as weakness. It will disguise itself as reasonable thoughts. I'll start Monday instead. 1 video won't hurt. I've already been productive today. I deserve this. Every single one of these thoughts sounds harmless in the moment. None of them are harmless. They are the old identity fighting for its life. Because your old identity knows that if you follow through, it dies. Here is something nobody tells you about the first week of real discipline. It is not painful because the tasks are hard. Waking up early is not hard. Training your body is not hard. What is hard is sitting inside boredom without reaching for something to numb it. Boredom is dangerous, not because it is uncomfortable, but because it is honest. When you are bored, there is nothing left to distract you from the truth of where you actually are in life. Most people fill every quiet moment with noise specifically, so they never have to sit with that truth. Scrolling is not really about entertainment. It is about avoidance. It is a way of making sure you are never alone with your own unfinished potential. For the next 90 days, you are going to remove the noise. And in that silence, you are going to meet yourself for what might be the first time in years. This is where the real training begins. Not the push-ups, not the running. Those matter, and we will get to them. But the deepest training happening in these 90 days is psychological. You are training your relationship with discomfort itself. Think about what actually separates the version of you right now from the version you are imagining. It is not intelligence. It is not talent. It is tolerance. Tolerance for doing things you do not feel like doing, at a level most people are simply not willing to sustain. Motivation will not get you through this. Motivation is a mood, and moods do not show up on command. This is why relying on motivation has failed you before. Every single time you felt inspired, you took action for 3, maybe 4 days. And then the feeling faded, and without the feeling, you had nothing left to stand on. Discipline does not ask how you feel. Discipline asks what you promised. And it keeps that promise, regardless of mood, regardless of weather, regardless of whether anyone is watching. This is the exact distinction that separates people who talk about becoming someone new and people who actually do it. Talkers wait to feel ready. Builders act before the feeling arrives, and the feeling eventually catches up to the action, not the other way around. So what does day one actually look like in practice? You wake up before the world starts pulling at your attention. You move your body, even if it is imperfect, even if you are out of shape, even if it is humiliating compared to where you want to be. You do not scroll first thing. You do not consume anyone else's highlight reel before you have created anything of your own that day. You choose one skill, one craft, one version of strength, physical or mental, and you give it real, undistracted attention, not the fragmented attention you have been giving everything for years. And then you go to sleep, having kept a promise that nobody else witnessed. That last part matters more than people realize. There is a specific kind of self-respect that only comes from keeping promises no one is checking on. Every time you follow through in private, you are quietly proving to yourself that your word means something. Every time you break a private promise, you are teaching yourself that your word does not matter, even if nobody else ever finds out. Most people have spent years training themselves to believe their own word is unreliable. That belief becomes a ceiling. You cannot build a powerful identity on top of a foundation you do not trust. These 90 days are how you rebuild that trust. Brick by brick. Promise by promise. In silence. Now let's talk about what happens around week 2. Because this is where the first real test arrives. By now, the initial burst of energy is faded. The excitement of starting something new, the identity thrill of calling yourself disciplined, all of that is worn off. And what is left is just the work, plain and unglamorous. This is usually where people quietly stop, not with a dramatic decision to give up, just a slow drift back into old patterns. One skipped day at a time, each one easily justified. Here is what you need to understand about that drift. It rarely looks like failure in the moment. It looks like a single reasonable exception. But identity is not built or destroyed by your best days. It is built or destroyed by what you do on the days you do not feel like it. Sung Jin-Woo did not become the strongest by winning easy fights. He became the strongest by refusing to stay the same version of himself even when every logical reason said he should have stayed cautious, stayed weak, stayed safe. He kept choosing the harder path when the easier one was sitting right there. You have that same choice, sitting in front of you right now, today, not in some abstract future. The question is whether you will recognize it when it shows up disguised as something small. Let's address something directly. Because if I do not say this clearly, you will misunderstand the entire message. This is not about becoming obsessed with productivity for its own sake. It is not about optimizing every second of your day into some soulless machine schedule. That is not transformation. That is just a different kind of noise. What we are actually talking about is identity. Everything else is downstream of that. Most people try to change their behavior directly. They try to force new habits onto an old identity, and it never sticks. Because some part of them still believes they are the kind of person who gives up, who is lazy, who lacks discipline. You cannot out-willpower a belief. Eventually the belief wins, and you slide back to whoever you secretly still believe you are. So, the real work of these 90 days is not just building habits. It is proving to yourself through evidence, day after day, that you are someone different now. Not someone who wants to be different, someone who already is. This is why disappearing matters so much. Because when nobody is watching, there is no performance to hide behind. There is only what you actually do. And what you actually do, repeated for 90 days without an audience, becomes undeniable proof of who you have become. Not to other people, to yourself first. That comes before anything else ever will. Around day 30, something starts to shift, and it will not be obvious at first. You will notice it in small moments. You will reach for your phone out of habit and put it back down without needing to. You will pass on something you would have said yes to a month ago. Not because you are forcing yourself, but because it genuinely does not appeal to you anymore. Your tolerance for wasted time will quietly shrink. This is not willpower anymore. This is identity catching up to your decisions. The gap we talked about earlier is starting to close, but do not mistake this for the finish line. Day 30 is not the transformation. Day 30 is proof that the transformation is possible. That is a very different thing, and confusing the two is exactly how people relax too early and lose everything they built. Here is where a deeper problem starts to reveal itself, one that most motivational content never addresses. Because the real enemy in this entire process is not your schedule, it is not your lack of time, it is not even your old habits, not really. The real enemy is the identity you have already trained yourself to be over years, sometimes over your entire life. And identities do not disappear just because you have had a good month. Around day 45, roughly the midpoint, expect the old identity to fight back harder than it did at the beginning. This is not random. This is how identity works. It has ruled you for years, and it is not going to surrender quietly just because you have shown some early progress. It will use every tool it has. Boredom disguised as burnout. A single bad day used as evidence that this isn't really working. A moment of loneliness twisted into the idea that maybe I'm taking this too far. This is the moment that determines everything. Because here is what nobody tells you about isolation. It does not just remove distraction. It removes the ability to blame other people for how your day goes. There is nobody left to distract you, nobody left to disappoint you, nobody left to compare yourself to in real time. It is just you and the mirror, and the mirror does not lie. Some people cannot handle that. They come back to noise because noise gives them somewhere to hide from themselves. If that happens to you around this point, do not panic and do not quit entirely. Notice it, name it, and return to the work anyway. Imperfectly if you have to, but return. If you are serious about becoming the person you are imagining right now, this is exactly the point where staying connected to something bigger than a single video matters. This is not motivation you consume once and forget. This is a training ground, and the next 90 days deserve more than a single spark of inspiration. Stay here. Come back to this. Let this be one of the anchors that pulls you back when the old identity gets loud. Now let's continue, because there is more ground to cover, and the second half of this journey is where the real transformation locks into place. By day 60, something noticeable starts happening to the people around you. Not because you told them anything, because they can see it. Your energy has changed. Your presence has changed. People who used to be able to pull you into distraction with a single message find that it does not work the same way anymore. Some of them will be genuinely happy for you. Some of them, and this is important to prepare for, will feel threatened by it, even if they never say so directly. This is one of the strangest parts of real transformation. Not everyone will celebrate it. Some people were comfortable with the old version of you because it made them feel comfortable about themselves. When you change, you accidentally hold up a mirror to the parts of their own life they have not been willing to face. That is not your responsibility to manage. Your responsibility is to keep building, regardless of who understands it and who does not. This is also where you start to understand something Sung Jin-Woo's journey has been quietly teaching the entire time. His strength was never really about power for its own sake. It was about becoming someone who could no longer live inside his old limitations, even if he wanted to. There was no going back for him, not because a system prevented it, but because the person who could tolerate that old weak life simply did not exist anymore. That is what these 90 days are actually building toward. Not a stronger version of your old self, a version of you that finds the old life genuinely unbearable to return to. Not because you are forcing discipline onto yourself anymore, but because the old habits no longer fit who you have become. Around day 70, the temptation to quit takes on a different shape than it did earlier. In the beginning, quitting looked like giving up entirely. Now this late, quitting looks like declaring victory too soon. You have made real progress. You can feel it. And that progress itself becomes a kind of danger, because it whispers that you have done enough, that you can ease off now, that you have proven your point. This is exactly the moment that separates people who experience temporary improvement from people who undergo permanent transformation. The final stretch is not about intensity. It is about refusing to let comfort creep back in disguised as balance. Ask yourself honestly, in this moment right now, listening to this, how many times in your life have you gotten 70% of the way to something and quietly convinced yourself that 70% was close enough? How many almost transformations are sitting behind you right now, unfinished, because the final stretch asked for more than you were willing to give at the time? This time is different. Not because you are suddenly a different person by magic, but because you finally understand the mechanism. You know now that the old identity does not die from one good month. It dies from consistency that outlasts its excuses. By day 80, you are not the same person who started this. Your body has changed in ways that took real, unglamorous effort. Your mind has quieted in ways that surprise you. A calmness that was not there before, born from finally trusting your own word. Your relationship with attention has fundamentally shifted. You no longer need someone to witness your effort, for that effort to feel real. This is the answer to a question we opened with, all the way back at the beginning. What actually makes someone unrecognizable after 90 days? It is not a dramatic physical transformation, though that may be part of it. It is not fame, or money, or applause, though those may eventually follow. What makes someone unrecognizable is that they have stopped needing permission. Permission from trends, permission from validation, permission from an audience, permission from their own past excuses. The person who emerges after 90 days is unrecognizable because they have quietly severed their dependence on being seen in order to feel like they exist. That is the real disappearance, not vanishing from other people's eyes, vanishing from your own dependence on their approval. As you move into the final 10 days, the goal shifts one more time. It is no longer about proving anything. It is about protecting what you have built. This is often the most underestimated danger of the entire process, because the finish line of 90 days can feel like an invitation to release everything at once, to celebrate so hard that you undo the very identity you fought to create. Do not do that. The final days are for reinforcement, not release. Keep training. Keep showing up in silence. Let the ending of these 90 days feel less like a finish line and more like the moment a new baseline becomes permanent. And then, eventually, you return. Not in some dramatic reveal, not with an announcement or a before and after post desperate for validation. Though you have earned the right to share it if you choose, you return simply by continuing to exist as this new version of yourself in front of people who remember the old one. And here is the moment that will hit you harder than you expect. Someone who knew you before will say something small, something they do not even realize is significant. They will comment on how calm you seem, how different your energy feels, how they cannot quite place what changed. And in that moment, you will feel the full weight of what these 90 days actually gave you. Not attention, not applause. Recognition from someone else, of a person you already knew you would become in private weeks before they ever noticed. That is the payoff, not the compliment itself. The confirmation that what happened in silence was real. Let's return one final time to where we started, because now the full weight of it should land differently than it did at the beginning. Sung Jin-Woo's transformation was never really about becoming stronger in the way people usually mean it. It was about becoming someone who could no longer live like his old self. Even in memory, the weak version of him did not get defeated in a single dramatic battle. It got starved out, day after day, choice after choice, until there was nothing left inside him willing to accept that old identity ever again. That is what is actually available to you over the next 90 days. Not a guarantee of wealth, not a guarantee of a transformed body, though effort in that direction will change you. What is guaranteed, if you actually follow through, is a shift in what you are willing to tolerate from yourself. And that shift changes everything downstream of it, because every result in your life is just the visible outcome of an identity nobody else can see. You do not need another 90 days to think about whether you are ready. You do not need to research the perfect plan, the perfect schedule, the perfect routine before you begin. That search for perfect conditions is just another disguise the old identity wears to keep you where you already are. You need to start today, not Monday. Not after this week ends. Today, in whatever small, imperfect, unglamorous way is actually available to you right now. Disappear from the noise that has been narrating your life for you. Disappear from the audience you have been performing for instead of building for. Disappear from the version of yourself that keeps asking permission to become who you already know you are capable of being. And for the next 90 days, in silence, without needing anyone to witness it, build the version of you that your old self would not recognize and would not be able to keep up with even if they tried. Let the silence do what noise never could. Begin.